Hi, I'm Leah DeChico-Ramu. Welcome. This is Teacher Talk. Episode 10 of How to Talk to Teachers, Teacher Talk. Happy New Year. I hope 2025 brings joy, peace, love, happiness, all that good stuff that we're hoping for. I'm really excited to do this episode because it's pretty close to my heart and close to others' heart, and it's coming on the heels of the episode we did with Tammy Webster around diversity and inclusion. I wanted to look and do a deeper dive into neurodiversity itself because I had a lot of questions and a lot of feedback from that interview, which is a good thing because what we want to do here is really get that discussion going, learn, have impact, and get what our kids need in the classroom. So for our Neuro-Spicy thinkers, I have a really special guest here today. Adam Krish is a recruiting and sales specialist, and he works as an intake support specialist at the Springboard Clinic, a Toronto ADHD clinic right here near home. He has lived experience with neurodivergence and ADHD for most of his life and has a daughter who has ADHD as well, who was misdiagnosed with a learning disability. And then he learned through just watching her symptoms that he was noticing some similarities to himself, and then she was diagnosed with ADHD as well. So he's been very gracious to share his experiences and help us through what other parents might be thinking, feeling, seeing, and maybe help navigate that experience for them. Because as I mentioned in the book, here it is, How to Talk to Teachers, I really don't think neurodivergence is a disability. I believe that it's what I call a diff-ability, just a different way to be in the world. And I think it's magic. I think our neurodivergent friends are here to help us. So let's focus on that and not the word disorder as we accept, include, celebrate people that are different and people that are here really to give us grace to have a different experience. So let's all celebrate that and talk a little bit about what that's like to live with. So a little bit more about Adam. He had a 20-year career in software sales and recruiting in the tech industry. And a couple of years back when there were a lot of layoffs, he was subject to that. But it sounds like it was a good thing because he found himself really questioning who he was and wanting to understand more about his lived experience and how he sees the world. So he did a lot of research around ADHD to help himself and his daughter, which we applaud because, good parents are always helping their kids, and parents are well-meaning and all trying to do the best they can. But he really, really did some deep work and has really landed in a place where he can help himself, his daughter, and others. And that's the Springboard Clinic that we talked about. So welcome, Adam. It's lovely for you to be here with us to share your experience. I applaud your courage to talk about this stuff, and also your graciousness in helping us understand your experience with your daughter.
Thank you. It's absolutely my pleasure. And I appreciate you having me on. And I've been looking forward to this all week.
Is there anything that you wanted to add before we start with some of the questions?
No, the only thing I will say is that it was actually me that was misdiagnosed as a kid. My daughter wasn't. But because of my misdiagnosis and my experience, I spotted symptoms in her, very early on, kept an eye on it. And then when she was old enough, I said, okay, it's time to deal with this. So,
right now, and there's a lot more out there for parents who are suspecting differences or diff-abilities in their children. So, during our time growing up, maybe it wasn't caught as easily as it would be today. So I'm glad that you were able to help your daughter through that, and I'm sure that she's getting everything she needs. Yeah. Me having talked with you a little bit and understanding what you do. But here's what struck me about you that I wanted to talk about, because I think it's symptomatic, shall we say, of the experience a lot of neurodivergent people have. You're doing it wrong. You wrote that in a blog. You're doing it. Can you please tell us about that?
That's one of my favorites. Sure. The "You're Doing It Wrong" piece that I wrote, actually, it's on my profile on LinkedIn. But the reason I did it is because when you grow up with the stigma that you are doing it wrong, you're not paying attention to detail, you don't follow instructions, you kind of wear that around a little bit. And I got to the point where it's like, why is it wrong? Why is this way wrong if it ends up with job completed and job completed properly? So where it came up is I documented how I cleaned the house one day. And that's where "You're Doing It Wrong" came from, is, as my wife would clean the house, and it would be room by room, and you kind of stay organized, and that was her way of doing it. And she would tease me with the way I did it, but so I documented it one day, and just because I would take the garbage down from one room and spot something in the kitchen needs to be tidied up, and that would lead me to raking the leaves in the backyard. At the end of the day, everything was done. Everything was done properly, and dare I say, even better. But that's where it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different, and that touches on your word of diff-abilities.
Because I wanted to talk about two things based on that comment. What hearing you're doing it wrong constantly does to a child who does things differently. What that does to self-esteem, what does to self-worth, what that does to all those very, very important things that kids developmentally need to be their best selves. You're doing it wrong. You hear that constantly. How do you show up in the world when you hear you're doing it wrong, and how do you heal from that?
It's a tough one. I'll be honest. Like I said earlier, it's one of those things that you kind of wear around, and what it leads to. And again, this is my experience. From others I've talked to, it leads to not wanting to do it at all, because part of neurodivergency as well is there's really only two modes. It's on or off. Until you kind of understand it or get help or coaching with that, you really only know all in or I'm not doing it. So when you're already being told you're doing it wrong, it leads you down that path of I'm just not going to do it. And when you don't do it as a kid, then it leads to, okay, poor grades, poor self-esteem, more, lectures, or conversations with mom and dad that are really uncomfortable. So it like anything else, it erodes, it kind of eats away at you, and you start to believe the hype.
For me, because if a child hears you're not doing it right, you're not doing it right, you're not doing it right constantly, and it's literally that they can't do it within the parameters set out of what is right. It's not that they can't, it's just the environment, the parameters that don't work for them. They start to believe that they're lazy,
Yes.
disobedient, bad, all that stuff. And that leads to a whole other host of mental health issues that we're not going to get into today. But that's a reality. So I think what I would love for parents to take away here is, instead of berating a child who's not doing something the way you think that it's your default about how it should be done, and that the child is going to be resistant, the child is going to be confused, and the child is going to basically have a self-fulfilling prophecy saying, I am lazy, I'm bad because I can't do what mom wants or dad wants in this situation, is to really sit and ask the question, what do you need? How are you feeling? Does this work for you? And then you have those aha moments with your children. Go, oh, okay, so you really don't like the red pen. You want to use the black pen to do your homework? Okay. It doesn't become a battle. So instead of imposing, really trying to work collaboratively and ask questions with the child to understand what that different environment looks like so they can succeed. Is that fair, Adam?
Yeah, it is, and it's one of those things that I've heard you touch on. I'm a big fan of, is embracing kind of the difference a little bit and seeing, again, just different doesn't mean wrong. And what it could mean also is that the neurodivergent brain can see things in a different way. And if they see, hey, this might be a better way to do it, it might actually be a better way to do it, even if it's not. You know, for kids, let them try, let them fail, because that's the only way, A, they're going to learn, and B, you're also showing that you value their line of thinking. And to say, hey, that actually is really smart. And, as a parent, myself, and having a neurodivergent child, I've taken the approach, like, I learn from her. And that's the thing. So seeing her way of doing things at times, learning, being able to learn from your child, it's amazing. I will give you the perfect example is my daughter gets herself up earlier than everybody else now, because she knows she has things to do and she has to get her day going. And she also wants time after she's gotten dressed and made her bed and grabbed her lunch and all that, to just sit and kind of decompress again, because it's a lot. And she said to me one night when I was putting her to bed that she realizes that she does have to work harder than quote, everybody else in order to succeed and function in the world. And I took that to heart. And when I got into the job with Springboard, there was a lot to do. And I realized, okay, you know what? I'm going to take that philosophy, and I might have to work a bit harder just to keep up. And I adopted that. And when she says, Daddy, why do you start work sometimes at 5 in the morning? It's because I have to work that much harder than everybody else sometimes. And I learned that from you. One of the best moments of the paradigm ever had.
Magnificent when we can step away from the traditional power paradigm of parenting that we've been raised with, that we know to be normal. And then we look at our children as teachers who teach us. My book is dedicated to my greatest teacher, my daughter. So that is very much how I parent as well. I'm not surprised that we are aligned in that way. That's a beautiful story. Takes a lot of guts, takes a lot of reflection to do that. So good on you. And I hope parents will think about that the next time you're having a bit of a power struggle with your child, neurodivergent, neurotypical, to have that sort of reciprocity where you're learning from each other, because it's truly a beautiful, beautiful thing, and a very special part of parenting when you can have that. But it takes work. Great. The one thing I wanted to sort of zero in on, that you said that we talk about that neurodivergent people do things differently, which is fine, and we have to accommodate them. They don't have to accommodate us or neurotypicals, divergent people. I think what we can really focus on is the creativity that they bring. The difference that in the way they see the world is teaching us the different way to do things that can be better, not always, but can be better. So we really need creative ways of thinking in today's world. Do we not? Everything is like, it's a tumultuous time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how change happens, is, it's the people that are labeled as crazy or, undisciplined or whatever it is.
Yes.
That's where some of the best ideas come from and have come from over the course of history. So, it's something, listen, it's hard as a parent, being even a neurotypical parent, and, never mind being a neurodivergent parent as well. It is hard to filter out what is creativity and what is a good idea, to take that and be able to also understand, okay, this is my child being difficult now, and this is my child chasing dopamine and arguing with me for the sake of arguing. So, there are still challenges as a parent where you have to filter in and out things. But it's better to be able to take that approach as opposed to just saying, no, my child is being difficult. They're not following the instructions. They're not doing the same as everybody else. So like you said, being able to embrace the difference and to kind of see the world through their eyes from time to time. Listen, it may not always work out and it might become a complete disaster. But at the same time, like I said earlier, let them fail. That's the only way, and be okay with it, and not, because then at least they know, okay, I tried and my parent backs me trying.
Of course, letting them do things, keeping them safe first and foremost, keeping things appropriate. Like let's jump back a bit and make sure that we understand that those things are in place when we're letting our children, our neurodivergent children, show us who they are and how they are in the world. One of the examples I use in the book that I think where this struck me is that I was at an event, and it was like a confirmation, an event where children were going to pick up a certificate, and a boy on the spectrum went up to pick up his certificate, and he was so happy, and he was making noises, and he was stimming, and I thought it was delightful. And the woman next to me, who I know is a kind person, poor thing. And I went, there's nothing poor about that. That individual is having their own unique experience here on the planet, and we can join in on his joy, his happiness, his excitement. So those are some of the human elements that we can also be learning for people that are different. And sometimes it's not joy, sometimes it's pain. Like sometimes it's frustration, sometimes impatience, all that stuff. But in an AI-driven world, they keep coming back to the machines are here. We have to focus more and more on what makes us human. What are those humanistic principles? And if we can learn that from the neurodivergent community, where we view them with kindness and compassion and just even interest. How are you doing that? Oh, that's interesting. And you can come to some sort of space where I don't want to use Schopenhauer in big philosophical words, or Kierkegaard with the Aufbauung and creating something new. Basically, where you're creating something new between the two of you, that's the essence of humanity, based in love. So I've said in the book over and over that I think this is magic.
Yeah.
For so many reasons, and not a disorder. It's a way that we humans need to embrace on the planet right now, because we need divergent thinkers. We need different ideas and different thoughts and different ways of doing things. And it's not a bad thing.
It's not, and even, just to touch on something else, like, I mean, if you as a parent have a neurodivergent child, and there's, in the 3, 4, 5 range, let's just say, sit down with them, watch them play. Watch them play, that they don't need a tablet, a phone. They'll love to have one. But if you watch them play and just see the imagination happen and the way they will play with toys and create, it is amazing. And that was one of the first things I noticed with my daughter, was that she could play with toys for hours and invent worlds and scenarios and it's beautiful to see. And like I said, and there's a lot of neurotypical children that they don't have the ability to do it. Actually, to be fair, they may not always have that ability, and they're much more inclined to pick up an electronic device.
Right. I mentioned a lot that there are parents that have come to me in the past and come to me now as part of what I do to help them navigate school, and tears. My child is autistic, and tears, and how they're going to succeed in the world, and oh my God, how am I going to take care of this child? All that stuff, and that's heartbreaking to see this again. To see a child from this deficit-based approach, that there's something wrong with my child, as opposed to, wow, my kid's going to teach me something. And that's easier said than done, right? There is some like, okay, I'm not going to have the kid I thought I was going to have.
Yeah.
But there has to be some sort of new lens when parents are dealing with autistic children or neurodivergent children. So again, not look at it from the perspective of lacking. It's not what my child can't do. What can my child do? And find the beauty in that.
It is, and Liam, that's where, to kind of segue, that's where having things like an assessment done is really beneficial, because I'll use the experience I had with my daughter. Is, I had a full psychoeducational assessment done for her, 4 or 5 years ago, I think, at this point, and not through Springboard. I wasn't there at the time, but the thing that I got out of it, which I didn't know would come out of it, was, yes, they identified that she has ADHD. Yes, they identified that she is dyslexic, which was actually liberating for all of us to realize, okay, there actually is an issue here, and she's not being stubborn, reversing her letters. And now I understand why she has an aversion to reading. But the best part of it, so I understand where the deficits are, which is what I was hoping to find out, but I didn't know that then I would be told she is off the charts gifted in language and vocabulary, and the way she speaks to adults at a young age, and that's the good stuff. That's the part that I encourage parents to have the assessments if they were, because it's easy to focus on what's wrong, but being able to also find out what is more than good and right is great, because the best way to deal with any deficiencies or weaknesses is to use your strengths to compensate. And when you know the strengths, then it's easier to deal with your weaknesses.
That is my approach. That is my lens and how I view anyone that's differently abled. I see it as a gift to me to challenge myself on how I view this person or the person in front of me. And I always start with kindness. Everything is kindness, compassion. I really believe it's a graceful moment when you can have that kind of exchange with somebody who's different. Because who's to say we're doing it right? Who's to say the neurotypical world is doing it right? That's my question. Why are we the...
Yeah, I think I mentioned that too the first time we talked. I said, maybe we're the ones that are right, and there were just more neurotypical people, and that's how the society was built. Who knows?
Those polarities are being shaken a bit, and I'm working with you and others to make sure that they are shaken, and we really reframe our approach to people that are divergent or people that are not part of the majority, because it's the people that are not part of the majority. You call them the crazy people, or the people, the dreamers. I call them the dreamers, that are really going to change the world and bring us forward. And we need that right now. So you went into my next question, which was going to be, tell us
Yeah,
about your work. Um, can you tell us a bit more about what you do and how
sure.
kids are assessed and what they're assessed for, and what does that look like?
Sure. So, I mean, my role with Springboard is essentially I'm the part of a team, but we are the first point of contact. So when somebody is looking to either gain information or find out about our services or even book their assessment, we are the people that they talk to first. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy, because being able to talk to somebody who might not know what they're dealing with, or might be scared or have the stigmas attached to it, to be able to kind of, like you said, take that kindness approach and put them at ease. That's kind of what I really see my job as. And, yes, it is sales driven. We are, Springboard is still a business, but at the same time, um, it's not just about that. It's about being able to help people and being able to give them the information they need. And I will often tell people I speak to, my job isn't to sell you on anything, or to, 'cause it's not a car, it's not a timeshare. There's no, heavy clothes coming. But, it's about making sure that I'm giving them all the information they need in order to make an informed decision. That's really what it comes down to. So that's part of my job. And then it's also being able to walk somebody through how the assessments will work and how it will best benefit them, or, the different types of services and assessments that we have, to best suit their needs, be it for themselves or for their child. And then I'll tell you this, in a lot of cases, I have people that will come and will book an assessment for their child, and afterwards they will come back and say, you know what? Being in that assessment and hearing what you have to say, there you go, hearing what you have to say kind of made me connect the dots a little bit. And now I would like to see what's going on underneath the hood. So you get a lot of that. So when it comes to children, however, one of the great things I've enjoyed about Springboard is the approach to the assessment. And it's actually the assessment for everybody, from children right up to people into their 70s and 80s at this point. But it's not about, here, fill out these forms and we are going to score it for you, and then we'll give you the results in like a 25, 30-minute phone call. You really don't need anybody to do it yourself. But what we do is we take a holistic approach to it and a very comprehensive approach to it, and we have more than one clinician involved, because we want to get multiple voices and come at it from different angles. So, for example, when we deal with children, because that's what we're talking about here, is, we start by learning about their day to day, how their symptoms show up at home and at school, kind of really getting an experience level feeling of what it's like to spend a day with, like what it's like to be them for a day. Because we all, and like I said, we want to find out what are the greatest strengths, but also where are the challenges? Because, like I said, when we know the strengths, we can help compensate with the challenges. So we're trying to understand the pattern of behavior. Then we try to get a little deeper, understanding mood, mental well-being, the history of everything that's been going on, and just getting a wider context of mood and symptoms, which allows the team to consider, what else is going on? Because it's not just about black and white ADHD and not ADHD. Because if it is ADHD, like I said with my daughter, hey, there's also dyslexia there. So we're understanding that. And, even if it's not ADHD, okay, what else could we be dealing with? So it's not, we're trying to eliminate really the black and white of all of it. That's understanding the ADHD side of things. And then when we talk about potentially
Mm-hmm.
getting into psychoeducational assessments, really what that involves is taking it involves the ADHD process, like I just talked about, but we're also building out the IQ profile. And this is what's really key. Understanding how their memories work, learning about chronological processing, figuring out how their, visual motor integration works. And then again, that's really understanding what is going on underneath the hood. And the great thing about the psychoeducational assessments also is it's one of the most recognized
Yes.
by academic institutions across the country, which is key for getting, I know we're
Yes.
going to talk about this, for getting accommodations. And, and that's really what it comes. it gives children and parents an understanding. And then it also gives them that aha moment that while my child may struggle here, look at how much strength they have in this area. And that is, because if you can embrace that, that will help your child because they'll know that you support them here and you are going to help them use this to work with that.
I was thinking while you were talking, it's almost like you come out with a report where if the child is old enough, and even if the child is younger, parents can talk to the child about it, of self-knowing. This is who I am. This is how I show up in the world, and that's okay. And it's okay. So not you're doing it wrong, it's okay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I think for me personally, that's a really good point you brought up is being able to have a child be self-aware at an early age and not waiting until they're in their late 40s like I was, because a lot of what happens with ADHD is there's masking involved, and you try to fit in and try to be normal, and there's even kids who are still resistant to the accommodations because they don't want to appear different than their peers. So that is another bridge that parents have to cross. But being able to understand who you are and embrace it, as opposed to trying to fit in,
and I think
it's really
technology has been quite the equalizer in terms of accommodations, because all kids are using devices these days. It's not just the kid that has an accommodation that has the device that's weird or different and so on and so forth, because it's tough. It's really tough when you're different, to have that confidence when you're a little one, to say, this is just who I am. But I think the more we model that to our children, the more we accept who we are, it will become seamless to children. That's what we're working towards. And I have a lot of examples, but I don't want to detract too much from this conversation, because I think we really do have to have another episode on individual education plans and accommodations, because that's a big one. And working with teachers to make sure the children get the accommodations they need, because sometimes that doesn't happen. Right? And that's tough.
Yes. And that's why I'm a big proponent of the psychoeducational assessment, because that alone, not alone, but that document and understand, that it's it's an educational piece. That is something that can trigger IRPC meetings and help get those IEPs going on, because it's really hard to just get an accommodation. Because again, I have love for our teachers, and the fact that, there's a lot of kids in class, and it's really hard to, single out a kid and accommodate them while you've got 29 other kids who need your attention. So having that plan already in place, it's big and helpful for everybody, the child, the teacher, the parent.
Yeah, and I really want to underscore that document is legal. That's a legal document, and your child has the right to have those accommodations. It's really, really, really important. And I think it's really important also that children know if they need accommodations, and they learn how to speak up, to advocate for themselves when something isn't happening, to say, hey, Mr. Ms., they, them, there, I need this. It's in my IAP. I'm not getting that. That is a life skill that is so important for everybody to have. So I want to underscore that.
It is. Yeah, and that is why actually, one of the benefits of having my daughter assessed with a psychoeducator at an early age, I think she was 6, it gave her an understanding as well, but then it empowered her to say, hey, I'm supposed to have this, or hi, I need to go, I need to take my work out in the hall because the classroom is very overwhelming for me right now. Being able to know what they can and can't do and how to help themselves. Like you said, it's a huge life skill, because needing accommodations, again, it's not a weakness. It's not, cutting corners, but that's something that they will need through their entire life. And as the world progresses, being able to speak up in an interview process when they're trying to get a job and say, hey, your interview process doesn't really work for me. I have struggled with it, and asking for an accommodation there. That's empowering, because that's life changing.
And not just for neurodivergent kids, for everybody's different. And it's these differences that make the world such an interesting place. And if we can learn to accept our own differences and accept and love who we are, and I keep using the word, and show up in that glory in an appropriate way, with compassion, with kindness, with grace for other, I really do think the world can be a different place, right? We fear change, we fear differences, and I'm hoping that we can move into a much kinder, more accepting, more inclusive world with neurodivergent kids, with all people. Yeah, I know. I think we're really
You and
connected
me
that
both.
way. I think we think the same way with our neurodivergent brains. Um, it's something that I celebrate. I myself have never
Yeah,
been formally tested, but I know and I've done all the tests online and stuff, and I know that I have neurodivergent traits. I won't go as far to label anything because again,
yeah,
I haven't been formally tested. But I think differently. I love that. I love that because I see things differently. And I'm old enough to know what I need and what works for me, the environments I
yeah,
need to work with. But little kids don't. So these supports at school and at home are really, really critical. So they don't get the I'm doing it wrong. The I'm doing it wrong constantly. And it's like, oh, I'm doing it differently and that's okay. And that's something to be celebrated as opposed to I'm different, I'm weird, why can't I be like everybody
yeah.
else? All that stuff. Yes.
And even understanding patterns of behavior, not, and again, I'll use my daughter's example, and I'm hoping she doesn't, upset that I'm using her constantly as an example, but at the same time, understanding that when we are in a crowded place, like a mall, for example, that she is not being difficult or a problem child. She's actually overwhelmed and her senses are overwhelmed and she needs to get out of there. So understanding that,
Yes.
that gives me the ability to be compassionate and to say, okay, let's get out of here, as opposed to not knowing and just thinking my child is being a disaster and is embarrassing me here, and I'm going to take them to the car and I'm going to scream at them. But so having that understanding allows for compassion as well.
Just change that to something I know a lot of parents struggle with, and that's homework. Trying to get neurodivergent kids to do homework
Hmm.
is brutal in the way we think they should be doing homework, right? So sit
Yeah,
down, pen and paper, kids got
yeah,
dysgraphia or whatever, sit for endless amounts of time working on something. I can't move, I can't focus. This doesn't speak to me in any way. I'm having trouble reading. And then I get labeled as bad. You're bad. And that is just rips my heart out because that's not the case. They're just different and they need. I'm thinking of that Pearl Jam song, Who's Out There That's As Old as I Am? Don't Call Me Daughter. That's brutal, right? Who's out there loving
you
anything
got it.
better besides me? But that
Yeah,
song really,
everybody in this house, I will
but
tell you that
it's
actually.
it's so true. That child at the table is getting beaten by her mother because she's not learning the way her mother thinks she should be. And even that song brings awareness. We're able to talk about a song from an artist who can understand neurodivergence, which I think is
Yeah,
really cool. So the connection between
yeah. Because the neurotypical way of doing it was, yeah, go to your room,
that's right.
close the door, and don't come out until your homework's done. And I remember that as a kid. And okay, I would go to my room and I would close the door, and that's what would happen for the next 4 hours because I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I'm too scared to ask questions. I don't want to fail, so I'd rather just not do it. And that's what would happen. Whereas understanding things that can help. I'll give you another example. Like, I've really become a big fan of things like body doubling. So, when she comes home with homework and I have work in the admin side of my job, which, is not always enjoyable,
Yeah.
I will have her come sit with me. She does her work, I do my work, because you
Yeah.
don't want to be the person sitting there while the other person's working. Or go to Starbucks. It's just different ways of doing it. And again, different doesn't mean wrong.
I'm going to tell everybody something here. So when I was writing this book, I wrote it in a month. Okay? But I actually paid somebody to sit with me for an hour. He just sat there. So I could get it done because it was all there. I don't know if it's the accountability or what. But yeah, I that works for me. I love to work with people because it just gets me going. And writing is very solitary, right? So sometimes I just need somebody to sit there and say, what do you think about this word? And then it just comes,
Yeah,
kind of thing. So bought a buddy, a study buddy,
yeah,
is critical for that. And that's just one of the ways that people that are neurodivergent can
yeah.
get things done. And again, that collaboration may garner something really cool, may garner something really, really interesting. So what I'm really trying to get across here to parents is that neurodivergent is not a bad thing. It's not a disorder. It's nothing to be sad about or hurt about or disappointed about. And yes, there are various levels of functioning and level 1, 2, 3, 4. People have are at different stages with the I don't want to call it a disorder. I want to call it with the condition, not a condition, with the way of being. I'm really conscious of the language that I'm using.
Yeah.
Kids are going to have different needs, from very little to a lot, but there's always learning there, and there's always something that we can do to support these children and let them be in the world, because they are here for a reason, and they're here to teach us. And I think that's the most important thing. So
Yes.
thank you. One thing I want to close with. So I just want to understand a little bit, if you could share what kind of supports outside of school can parents access at Springboard for kids who are different in the world and having their own experience. I mean, I know you do coaching, I know you do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, outside of we do the ADHD assessments, and we have the psychoeducational and gifted assessments, and we've also, recently started doing ASD assessments too, which, not every clinic is doing, and we're even doing it in conjunction with the psychoeducational assessment. But yes, we have the ADHD coaching. We also have executive functioning coaching. There are supports for parents as well, and families, because even if it's only one neurodivergent person in the house, it changes the dynamic, and everybody still has to learn to work with each other, not just the neurotypical side of the family, but the neurodivergent person needs to understand that, they also aren't the only ones there too. So, there's coaching for that. And then we even have supports for teachers in the schools. One of the things that we are working is working to educate teachers and how to better support kids who have ADHD needs in the classroom as well. We even have supports where there is coaching available within the school system through us. So, yeah, you can even offer, in-school coaching for students and teacher partnerships and one-on-one support. So it really is something that we are trying to really get out there, because there is a number of ways to support people and support the kids. So that's what we're talking about here. So it's not just about saying, okay, you have a learning disability, you don't have a learning disability, you have ADHD, you don't have ADHD, but whatever is going on, somebody is it's still a person, child, adult, seniors, still a person, still needs loving compassion, still needs help, and we are definitely here to do that. And to go back to it, it's what I love about my job, is being able to be that first voice that they hear and talk to them about it and make them feel safe and comfortable. That's really what people need, because I think I've touched on this with you. It's, being able to have that conversation, that first conversation with someone, it takes a lot of courage to come out and say, hey, to ask for any kind of help, but to say, I'm struggling, I'm looking to understand more. It takes courage. And I want people to understand that. And I make sure that, they can give themselves a hug if they need to, and just know that they're doing something really brave and strong, and they shouldn't feel
Adam,
bad about it.
I know I want to be mindful of your time here. I just want to say that you're my hero. I couldn't be more happy and pleased to know you, and celebrate the work that you are doing. You're everything. Oh, thank you.
You as well, Lee.
Me too.
I'm so glad that we connected, and I'd be happy to come back on whenever you want.
We've lost Adam because he's got another. Oh, there you're back. So for parents, if you suspect, because you know in your gut if something's going on with your child, get intervention, get some help early. That's always the best thing to do. And for Adam, I just want to close with this: you, my friend, are doing it right. Thank you.
Thank you. But you know what, Lee? It's okay if I'm doing it not the way everybody else does. Not wrong, just different. Different is okay. And just in case there are parents who this has triggered something, springboardclinic.com.
I hope to see you again soon. You've shared some really wonderful insight that will help future parents and ultimately help our children. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Amazing. Thank you. You too. Bye, Lee.